I'm Sean again. I'm on the healthy eating team here at DFA Texas, and this is our presentation. So once again, I'm Sean. I'm the team lead for this project, and I'm a sophomore mechanical engineering major.
I'm Ria. I'm a computational engineering major, and I'm a freshman.
I'm Srija. I'm a management information systems and radio, television, film sophomore, and our project mentor for this semester was Jared Cole.
So this is a design thinking process. It consists of 5 steps, and our group is currently on the define phase. So the first part of the design thinking process is empathize, and that's where we research our topic of question. Our group did so by creating a survey and using those survey responses to create a unique set of questions for our interviews. The define phase is where you take the research and figuring out the problem that you are trying to solve. And from these interview outcomes, our group took the similarities between the individuals we interviewed in order to create 3 unique personas that have different goals and challenges when approaching the idea of healthy eating. So the ideate phase, we slightly touched on during our discussions, and it's a stage where you share ideas and brainstorm possible prototypes. Since we've lightly touched on this idea, we will revisit a possible prototype at the end of the presentation. And lastly, we have the prototype and testing phase. So these are the Gen Z trends, and by that we mean we collected secondary research in order to get more context on the topic of our project. So among college students, we discovered that 33% of them eat fast food regularly, 12% eat at restaurants regularly, and 27% go to a gym regularly. This is our quantitative versus our qualitative data. Under our quantitative data, we created an eating survey that went over the perceptions of healthy eating, the reflections of eating habits, and people's wellness goals. And the main goal that we were trying to get from our quantitative data was what comes to mind when you think of healthy eating. For our qualitative data, we did user interviews, and we asked people about their eating backgrounds. So what they ate growing up versus how they eat in college now and how that's changed. Their food journey, which what they do whenever they go to a grocery store to buy groceries for the week and to make meals for the week. And then we also asked them about their present and ideal state. So how they eat right now, and would they change anything about that in the future? And the main goal of our qualitative data was to figure out the answer to the question, how would you ideally prepare food for yourself? We had a total of 56 survey responses, 8 user interviews, and 4 overarching themes.
So our 4 overarching themes are time crunch, winging it, sticking to familiarity, and if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Our first theme we call time crunch, which mainly focuses on the fact that students feel that they don't have enough time to prepare food given their schedule is so busy with their classes and extracurricular activities. Like one of our interviewees said, I only have an hour between classes at noon, so I usually end up eating out. Our second theme is called winging it, which means that students don't necessarily know how to plan and shop according to the meals that they'd like to make. As one interviewee said, I usually walk into H-E-B and figure out what I need by looking at the items around me. Our third theme is called sticking to familiarity, which means that since many students feel that they lack the skills in the kitchen needed to prepare a meal from scratch, they tend to fall back on recipes that they already know or things that their parents showed them growing up. So like one interviewee said, I mostly cook things my parents made back at home. And finally, our last theme is if it ain't broke, don't fix it. So a lot of students have, certain healthy eating goals or feel that they're not necessarily making the healthiest eating choices, but because they prioritize affordability and flexibility within their schedule, they're okay not necessarily meeting the goals of their with their healthy eating choices. So like one student said, if I had infinite time, I'd pay more attention to cooking. But as we know, infinite time is not necessarily a reality.
Okay, and from our research, we managed to come up with 3 separate user personas, one of which we will be focusing on for the remainder of our project. So first we have Sarah, the routine eater. Sarah is the kind of person who cooks and goes to eat out to eat full, mostly as a result of her not having enough time to either cook or to learn more recipes. And because of this, she falls back on recipes and perhaps restaurants that she's already familiar with. And she's most concerned about the time it takes to eat as well as how convenient it is. Next, we have Jonathan, the dependent eater. Jonathan is a bit similar to Sarah in that he is most concerned about time and convenience, but Jonathan gets his food from a decidedly different source. Jonathan, as the name suggests, is dependent on outside sources for his food. So Jonathan might be the kind of person who has his parents bring him food every weekend, or who eats at dining halls either on it or off campus. And finally, we have Lindsay, who is the home chef. And Lindsay is sort of the most competent cook out of our three personas here, and she has a really positive relationship with food. She has a lot of experience in the kitchen. She knows how to make a lot of recipes, and she enjoys cooking and exploring new dishes and cuisines. And most importantly, she knows what's healthy and what's good for her. So she knows what to cook in order to meet her nutritional and dietary needs. As we mentioned, as I mentioned, we'll be focusing on Sarah for the remainder of this project. And our reasoning behind that is that Sarah represents the most or the highest proportion of the students here at UT. We feel like her characteristics are pretty representative of a majority of the student body. And the other two personas here are a little more niche and a little harder to design for. So that is our reasoning for focusing on Sarah. And now we'll move on to Sarah's daily journey. So we wanted to take a look at how Sarah goes through her day in terms of what she eats and when she eats it. So she begins her day by waking up and eating something simple, such as cereal before classes. And then she might be a little stressed because she doesn't want to be late. And then after that, she will go somewhere for lunch. She might choose a simple fast food restaurant like Chipotle, or she might bring some food that she had prepared the night before. Afterwards, she might go to her extracurriculars or afternoon classes, and she might eat a snack at this time because she's tired. And finally, in the evening, once she's done with our classes, she'll go home and prepare food for herself. And she might prepare something that she already knows how to prepare because that's the easiest and it takes the least time.
As said before, we slightly touched on the ideate phase, and a potential prototype for Sarah came up whenever we were discussing our topic. Our first major frustration is her lack of knowledge for new recipes. That's why she sticks to something familiar. So a potential prototype would be a website that compiles a list of healthy recipes that share the same ingredients for the week. So that would give her more recipes to try for the week, as well as not have her having to buy so many different ingredients to make these meals. Her major frustration too was that grocery shopping can be really inconvenient. And the possible prototype would compile a list of ingredients needed for the week, and it would allow the user to add all the items to their online shopping cart if they decide that they don't want to go to the store. If not, they could still take that itemized list of ingredients and take that to the store so they know what they're looking for and they can grab those items and leave in a timely fashion. Her major and last frustration was that she had a lack of time for cooking, and this prototype would have the recipes chosen for this prototype would be chosen to suit meals for one person, so a normal college student, and they could easily be made within 30 minutes to an hour, which is very important because this is the normal amount of time between most college students' classes.
Okay, so as we mentioned, we're finishing up our define phase and moving on with ideation. And during the ideation phase, we will have an ideation session in which we brainstorm more ideas. We want to take a deeper look into the causes of Sarah's frustrations, and we want to try to answer the question, how might we alleviate Sarah's pain points? After we finish ideation, we'll move on to prototyping. So you just heard a potential prototype that we might go forward with, or we might not, depending on the results of our ideation phase. But no matter which prototype we choose, we will have to research the different platforms for the final product, whether that be something like an online app or something a little more physical. And we want to create a product that can be used by the greatest number of students. And once we settle on a prototype, we'll start to do user testing so that we can ideate or we can iterate and we can refine on our prototype. And that's about it for our presentation. What questions do y'all have?
Could we stop screen sharing and so we could look
yes.
at each other kind of as the gallery view? Awesome. Maybe I can go first since I already requested this view. How about that?
Sure.
Yeah, great job. I think that one of the things that I would say that you did a really good job on was the insights. I thought it was really the sort of 4 key insights that were kind of guiding your work to go forward, I think seemed sort of rooted in good research and to resonate with what makes a lot of sense being on a university campus. I think that seems like you're sort of refining and defining this and reframing this project to get to something that has a lot of impact. There are 2 maybe pieces of things that I'd like to see more about or sort of something to help reframe is that there's a lot of conversation around cooking at home, around sort of like, and I think this is a common, and actually this is a great project and it's a great project with students and I've done it several times. And I think one of the things is we talk about cooking at home as kind of 2 key things, which is like ingredients and getting ingredients and then like doing it quick, like less than 30 minutes for a meal. But everyone's been in quarantine now. So unless you're just like only on fast food, you actually have probably learned really viscerally that cooking at home is way more of an experience than that. It's like having a cutting board, having a knife, having all the pots and pans, washing all the vegetables, prepping everything, cooking all the food in that period of time, and then doing all the dishes. I don't know if any of you have had this thing where like you cook a big meal and then the next day you didn't do all the dishes and now you've got to cook again. And so you're like, okay, well, actually to get to my 30-minute meal prep, not only do I need all the ingredients, but now I need 30 minutes of dishes, then dry my dishes, then prep my, so like, I just would expand your understanding of like what it really means to be, if that is the direction that you go. I know there's different directions. And the other one is a piece of advice as you get into ideation around something that I learned from another faculty member that he calls the 5-minute test, which is like, if you're landing on an idea, that seems like the right way to go. The 5-minute test is, could a reasonable person with access to the internet and a little bit of understanding about this project in 5 minutes find the same idea or come up with the same idea? So like, it's sort of a good gut check to be like, it's an app that gives you a recipe list at the grocery store. And it's like, does that exist? Could I find that on the internet? And if the answer is yes, then you might either need to like figure out a different angle or go back to your research to dig deeper to be like, what haven't we found yet? Like, why aren't these apps working? Why did we come to the same place that everyone else has come to? And they might be years ahead of us with a website and a service. So as you move into those ideation and prototype, use that 5-minute test to kind of check yourself, which is always helpful.
Yeah, for sure. That's something that we definitely thought of. Like eating is such a, it's a universal thing shared by not only college students, but everybody else. So this like whatever solution that we might come up with, like they might also be usable for people who are not college students. Maybe someone who's like a busy office worker or something like that who also doesn't have time to cook. So yeah, that's something we'll definitely look into.
I really enjoyed the insights because I'm doing a thesis right now, or wrapping it up on student housing, and the way that to Gray's point of like cutting boards and just all the utensils that you need intersects with nutrition hasn't been explored too much, because I don't think there's a ton of nutritionist designers out there. So I'm really excited for where this project goes, what you uncover. I'm kind of wondering, so I have a question on that idea of sharing and economies of scale, and if you know anything from the interviews so far, if you've seen anything like that on just having roommates who you can split the kitchen with, and really makes a lot of ingredients accessible, and just is so much more is accessible with that. If you've seen anything with that.
Actually, yeah, we did have one interviewee, I think Shrija can attest to this, who said that she shares the food that her roommate cooks, right, Shrija?
Yeah, so we actually interviewed two people who were roommates. One I would kind of categorize as like the dependent eater, someone who like really lets stress affect how she eats, and when she's stressed, she tends not to eat, or she just sticks to the meals that her parents provide her. And so like because her roommate, who's like more of a home chef, learned a lot about nutrition growing up, like really does enjoy cooking and prioritizing that time. Like because she eats her meals with her, like they've not only like just connected and had that time to sit together and like talk about their day, but then they've also like she learns new meals, like she learns how to cook for herself, and that's something that she's wanted to expand now that she's like stuck in quarantine, because she actually found that she really enjoys cooking by watching her roommate cook.
I love your mustache, by the way, Michael. It's fantastic.
I actually had another question. I'm not sure if we're short on time, but so feel free to cut me off. But so obviously, like we've all been facing challenges because of COVID. I wanted to ask, like, what unique challenges did y'all face, and how did you adapt to overcome them?
In terms of cooking or in terms of doing the project?
Doing the project, mostly.
Oh, yeah. So, um, communication, I think, was one of the big ones. Since everyone's like at home, we had to like, first of all, we had to adapt to using Zoom to facilitate all our meetings. And then we had to like, since we couldn't meet in person anymore, we had to do research sort of independently and work on it, work on the project, sort of I don't want to say like in a vacuum, since we could still communicate, but since we were all separate, it was definitely a little more challenging than doing it in person.
And I also believe that Chris also raised his hand as well. Chris, do you have anything to say?
Oh no, it was more along the lines of what Brooke asked. I was just curious to see how they adapted.
Yeah, I mean, we use Zoom mostly. I'm curious to see what the other groups did, if they did anything different, but Zoom worked out for us.
Yeah, I think honestly, because we had to use Zoom and because we could communicate in that way, I feel like it made scheduling meetings easier. I remember when we were all on campus, like we all had like really, it was hard to schedule a meeting around each other, and like one person would eventually have to miss. But with Zoom, I feel like we had a lot more flexibility and can meet even in the evening when normally like people couldn't meet. So
one challenge we definitely met was we did get 56 survey responses, but then when we went to go contact those people after COVID and everyone was back, we didn't get as many responses back from the people that said that they were okay with being contacted again. So that was one issue.
Do we have any more questions for the healthy eating team?
I hope you guys did a great job. Especially, I saw this on Thursday, and I feel like you guys definitely put in a lot of work, and I could see the improvement. It was very succinct, and you guys had like a clear message and points to come across. I think I would just echo Gray's point of when you look at that journey map, where you have these four like really basic, easy steps, and it wasn't necessarily her frustrations weren't coming across. She has to do the dishes, she has to prepare, she has to come up with a concept. I would encourage you to kind of try to put that together in the journey map, because it'll really help in your ideation phase when you're trying to solve a problem, to know what goes wrong in all of those steps. So overall, I think you guys are on the right track, and I would just encourage you to kind of keep bringing out the research so you have a rich ideation session.
Yeah, thank you for your pointers, by the way, Jared. Much of this presentation I think we can attribute to Thursday's meeting, so thank you for that.
Good job.